Welcome once again to SoCo Chat, a podcast where we hear directly from county leaders, discuss the latest news, and talk about all things concerning our beautiful corner of California known as Sonoma County.
Welcome to SoCo Chat. I'm your host, Matt Brown, Deputy Communications Manager for the County of Sonoma. Thank you for joining us. The first 5 years are among the most important years of a person's life, a time of dramatic brain development when the foundation of a child's lifelong potential is established. Studies show that children who start out in safe, nurturing environments grow up to be happier, healthier people, and become contributing members of our community. For this reason, investing in these early years of childhood is critical. Our guest today understands the value of investing in early childhood. Angie Dillon-Shore is the Executive Director of First 5 Sonoma County, an organization that funds programs and services that promote, support, and improve the early development of children from the prenatal stage through age 5. Angie Dillon-Shore, welcome to SoCo Chat.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Well, let's just start off with your organization. Some of our listeners may be unfamiliar. Tell us what First 5 Sonoma County is.
Sure. First 5 Sonoma County is one of 58 county-level commissions across the state of California that were established in 1998 through a statewide ballot measure that established a tobacco tax carve-out to support programs for children birth to 5 and their parents. So we were established in the late 90s and were part of the county. We were embedded in the Department of Health Services for many years. And then in 2019, we became an independent public agency. So we invest countywide in programs to support children's health, nurturing families, and in early care and education.
Wow, that's great. Tell me a little bit how that works. I understand that you fund some community organizations, and tell me some of these community-based organizations and programs that you partner with.
Sure. I'm sure some of your listeners are familiar with a lot of them. In the area of early care and education, one of our major community partners is 4Cs. We fund them through grants and contracts to do a lot of professional development and coaching of childcare and early learning providers. We also fund organizations like Early Learning Institute to do support for children with developmental challenges, screening. And then we also support a lot of family resource centers around the county that support families with basic needs and system navigation. So organizations like La Luz, Sonoma Can, used to be called CAP Sonoma. So we have quite a few funded partners across the county.
Yeah, so these are all very important organizations doing really important work.
Absolutely. We can't do our work without these community-based organizations. First 5 is primarily the administrator of funding. We do a few countywide programs to work directly with families, such as we distribute car seats. But most of our work is done through the hard work on the ground of community-based organizations, primarily nonprofit organizations.
Yeah, that's great. I want to get into some of the work in a minute, but first, tell me why it's so important to invest in early childhood. Why are those first 5 years so critical?
Yeah, you kind of touched on it in the introduction. I mean, the first 5 years are when the brain is developing very, very rapidly, more rapidly than any period of life. Science has found that actually in the first 5 years, 90% of brain architecture is established. And that developing period is when the things that are happening around the infant, the toddler, the young child, how much language they're hearing and engaging in, how rich the environment is and stimulating, how much they're interacting with caregivers in positive ways. All of these impact not only the brain development, but then the later outcomes. So that includes health outcomes, whether or not they'll be ready to succeed when they get to kindergarten when they're 5 years old. In those outcomes can be positive, but they can also be negative outcomes where then we need to intervene later. So the first 5 years are so important because if they go really well and we have all of the nurturing environment in place, then that child is ready to go, ready to learn, healthy, and ready to be successful in life.
And we can invest in them early, then we won't need to invest in them potentially later in life.
Absolutely. And we've also found, there have been economic analyses that have us very well established that every dollar spent investing in early education, in early care, in intervening before a child is 5 years old, it returns at least $7 to each dollar. That's one of the monetary analyses that's come through. And I've seen even up to, $14, $15 to a dollar. So better than most stock market investments.
Absolutely. That's a great return on investment,
Yes,
no
it
doubt.
is.
That's great. Well, speaking of investing, in 2024, voters in Sonoma County agreed that investing in early childhood is important. That's when they passed Measure I. It's a quarter-cent sales tax. Tell us a little bit more about Measure I.
Sure. So Measure I was what's called a voter-led initiative. It was put on the ballot by citizens, by voters who collected over 29,000 signatures. And also the voter-led initiative can pass by a simple majority threshold. So it passed actually at 66%, but it only had to pass at 50% plus one vote. So the majority of Sonoma County voters supported that. It passed. The revenue was predicted and is coming in at about $32 million annually. And those funds, after the administrative costs, 60% is dedicated to early care and education investments, and 40% is dedicated to supporting children's health and perinatal mental health.
So tell me a little bit about that. So I was going to ask about how it's dispersed in the community. You said 60-40, and tell me a little bit more about those categories that it goes towards.
So early care and education, these are things like childcare facilities, wages for childcare providers, which are historically very low. We have a real workforce problem in our county and really everywhere in the country and all over the state, but especially in counties where it's quite expensive to live. So there will be a boost of wages for the lowest paid childcare providers. Things like that I mentioned that 4Cs does already, which is coaching and professional development that addresses the quality of early care and education environments. So those are sort of system investments that all of those things have to be in place in order to have a strong early care and education system.
Yeah.
And then on the health side, also system investments that really focus on making sure that families can access, that they know where to go for things that support their child's health, that they have navigation supports for our systems, that there's screening available, not just at their pediatrician's office, but in places in their neighborhood that are easy to get to, where there are trusted providers, and then screening for developmental concerns as well as behavioral health concerns. And then also Measure I called out specifically the mental health in the perinatal period, because we know that if we can support the mental health of pregnant and birthing people, that the outcomes for child development are better. So the funding from Measure I will also support perinatal screening and identification and treatment.
Wow. Do you have any examples of specific projects that have been funded so far in Measure I?
Sure. Yeah, we did. The 5-year plan was just approved by the Board of Supervisors in December. But prior to that, last summer, actually, the Board of Supervisors and the Commission approved what we called early investments because funds were already being collected. The Sonoma County tax dollars were already in the bank. And so we made a few investments that are already having an impact. There's an open RFP right now for childcare facilities. Those grants are up to $50,000, and our first priority in the facilities investments are things that are urgent, that affect children's health and safety. So mitigating mold in an environment, really important. That can have a terrible effect on children's health. Roofs, play areas, things like that. We're going to do a one-time investment in childcare providers' wages in June, while we also are building out a model for a permanent, long-term effort that will also invest in the wages of childcare providers. In the health area, we made a large grant to the Healthcare Foundation of Northern Sonoma County to help with scholarships and paid apprenticeships for clinical folks, so students working on their MFT or LCSW that particularly are interested in working with young children and women in the perinatal period, because we don't have enough providers, especially BIPOC providers, so culturally responsive clinical providers in that area.
Wow.
So those are some examples.
Yeah, that's great. Does Measure I have a sunset date or a renewal date?
No, there's no sunset. The folks that led the campaign polled multiple times and found that actually likely voters preferred that it did not have a sunset, that it was passed and it could be brought back to the ballot. That's the only way that it could be changed. So in perpetuity, we will have this dedicated revenue source for children 0 to 5 in Sonoma County.
That's great.
Yeah.
How will we know if these investments are making a difference?
Great question. So First Five has been, since the late 90s when we were established, we've been evaluating all of our investments. We ask our providers to collect data about the services that they provide, not only so that we know who are receiving the services, but the actual impact of those services. So we are upping our game even more with evaluation with Measure I, and we have a research and evaluation manager on staff, and we're also working with an amazing firm that has a particular expertise in evaluating programs for early childhood. So the community will see an annual report come out each year. The first one will probably be next summer of 2027. That will provide lots of information to the community about how their tax dollars are being used and the outcomes that we're seeing.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, you mentioned a lot of great services and programs. If you're a parent or caregiver, how can you connect to those services or programs?
That's such a good question. So they can definitely go to our website, first5sonomacounty.org, and there's information there. We also have a parent resource guide that we update every year that has lots of information. And then I also really strongly urge parents that aren't connected to their local family resource center to connect with them. There are about 8 across the county, and really their primary role is to help link families with young children to services and programs. And if they're not sure where one is near to where they live or work, they can give us a call at First Five, and we will connect them.
Excellent. Well, that's great. Is there anything else you'd like to mention about First Five or Measure I, or anything I forgot to ask?
Yeah, just would, whenever I'm asked this question, kind of anything else, I just always want to say how appreciative and grateful I am to the voters of Sonoma County for recognizing how important investing in children and families is. They are the future of Sonoma County. They're going to determine whether or not we continue to thrive economically, and so just really truly grateful for that, and thank you for your support, and hope that folks stay engaged.
Yeah, well, thank you for all the work you do in the community. This is important things that you're doing, and we really appreciate all the work you're doing out there.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you for coming on SoCo Chat to share all this information with our listeners. Thanks for joining us today. We'd also like to give you a SoCo Chat coffee mug as our token of appreciation for joining us today.
Love it. Thank you so much, Matt. Appreciate it.
Of course. And to our listeners, if you have comments about this episode or have a suggestion for a future SoCo Chat discussion, please email us at publicaffairs@sonomacounty.gov. Thank you all, and we hope you continue to follow SoCo Chat on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, and of course, YouTube. See you next time. Thanks again, Angie.
Thank you.